There we go. Welcome everybody to our Learning and Skills Scrutiny Committee, dated Monday, 15th of July, 24. Welcome everybody, councillors and officers. Hopefully you have a very proactive meeting. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Have we got any?
I haven't received any, Chair. I know that Councillor Carroll and Councillor Chloe may have to leave the meeting earlier.
Okay, Councillor Chloe, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, that was just to say that I am going to have to leave the meeting early.
Okay, we'll try and be as brisk as we can so that we involve you as much as we can in the meeting. Item 2 on the agenda is election of Vice Chair. Very important post to support me. Can I have a nomination for Vice Chair or nominations for Vice Chair?
We've received a nomination for Councillor Lucy.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that nomination?
I will second it.
Happy to second, yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Allard and somebody else in the background was seconded. Any other nominations? No? Are you all in favour of electing Councillor Lucy as Vice Chair once again? Just a quick show of hands.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you, Lucy, for preparing to do that. So thank you very much. Good. That's in place. Item 3 and item 4, standard agenda items, declarations of interest, and also declaration of party whip. Taking them together. Are there anything? No. Okay. Items 3, items 4 are dealt with, and we move on to item 5. The minutes of our previous meeting. I believe it was the 23rd of April or something like that. Members, they've been circulated. Is everybody content that they're a correct record of our previous meeting? Yeah, could I have a proposal there? Obviously, somebody who was in the meeting. Councillor, just having a look at the membership there now. Anybody prepared to propose their true and correct record?
Happy to do that, Chair.
Yeah, Allard, and seconder. If there's none, I'm happy to second that because I was present. And unless I hear anything to the contrary, those minutes will be accepted. Good. Thank you very much. Item 6 on the agenda, National Plan for Music in Powys update. Councillor Peake, do you wish to introduce this?
Chair, can I just come in? We're just waiting for Lindsay. She's having problems trying to get into the meeting. Right, okay. She's going to be presenting this item.
Yeah, no, that's a problem. Should we just go to item 7 on the agenda, the work programme? We'll deal with that while we're waiting for Lindsay. Any comments in relation to the work programme? Any additions? Councillor Lucy. Sorry, Lucy, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I lost my mouse then as well. Having just sat in a meeting of the mine's gone blank. What was it, Gary?
PSB.
The Powys, God, what's it called?
Powys Services Board. Scrutiny.
Services Board. Thank you very much. A scrutiny meeting, where the health of healthy eating is one of the items that they're looking at, really in relation to sort of for under 5s. But it just struck me that along with that, we should really be looking at our schools and healthy eating, and not just the diets, but actually in terms of, where the length of time they're getting for their meals, whether they're sitting down to eat their meals, all those kind of things that are surrounding healthy eating.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem for the service be content to bring something to one of our meetings in relation to that. Yeah, I'm seeing heads nodding, so I'm sure you're in agreement. Richard, please, Dr. Richard.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just nodding to say yes, we would. We'll bring something around that suggestion.
Yeah, so we'll liaise with Catherine. We can stick that into our program. I've got hands up. Please, apologies. I'm doing this on my phone, so it's not necessarily in order. Councillor Gareth first, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was expecting Hannah to speak first. I'm just looking at the work programme. It does seem to be very light with nothing on the budgets for both delegated budgets and centrally retained budgets for future work programme. I'd have thought, given the state of the dire state of the delegated budgets, whether we should have a quarterly update on those and something on the non-delegated elements of the budgets.
Yeah, I think if we could build something a little bit more sustainable into our work program, I think that would be advisable. Obviously, reflecting on what comments are on that item today. So yeah, if we could do that, we'd be very grateful. Really, Anwen's got her hand up.
I was just going to accept and agree to that every quarter, if that's would work for you as councillors.
Yep. No, sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't always have to be in great depth, does it? It can be just something there to monitor as we go. Councillor Alid and then Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Chair. That was going to be my suggestion, to hang a standing item on the agenda around the finance. But also Welsh Government are publishing a bill today on Welsh, increasing the level of education through the medium of Welsh, around the million Welsh speakers. I don't know any detail. I've just seen the headline. It'd be good to have some sort of paper back and the implications for Powys on that, whether it could be worked into the Trochi working group or needs to be picked up somewhere. That's
It seems reasonable to bring it with our Trochi reports and things. So if we could link that with that'd be good. Yeah, good. Councillor Ansler.
Yeah, mine was just to support Lucy's proposal on health, but wondering, could the food side be linked with exercise in some way?
Okay. Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, we'll give that some consideration then.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else on the Councillor Pete?
Chair, as your Trochi working group is going to be reporting soon, perhaps there's scope for you to look at healthy eating and exercise in the context of the curriculum and do a piece of work actually with schools rather than just with officers to bring a report back on that.
Okay. Would everybody be content with that suggestion? Yep. Nodding heads. Sarah, please.
Apologies for the camera, it's still not working. It was just schools causing concern. We have raised it a few times. Could we see that onto the programme?
Yeah, we spoke about this in our pre-meeting the other day, and it's something that we're not picking up on now, really. How is the best to approach this now, really? Dr. Richard, you're reaching for your mouse, so I'm thinking you're coming in there, really.
Yes, thanks so much, Chair. We have put on the forward work programme the Estin updates. I think probably we could just look at timely slots to update you on the schools which are causing us concern and the work that the teams are doing around to support those schools. So again, I think it's something we can take back, consider and feed into the plan.
Yeah, I recognise what you're saying about the Estin reports. It's just that moment in time. We seem to be missing them schools which are causing concern, so we need to have a little bit more structure to that so that they come. And it's a change in the reporting structure with the demise of Eru, really, which we're finding that we're not getting these schools coming forward. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. Just to wondered whether it's worth us looking at the social media policies that schools have. I know lots of schools will be sharing images in various different places, and with changes to artificial intelligence and social media use policies, it might be worth having a look at those. Something that's coming up. I've got a child who's just about to start school, so something lots of people are talking about in our area. So yeah, just a suggestion from me.
Okay, yeah, that's something we've never picked up on before. What, so looking at the services policy documents, really. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it comes under learning and skills or whether that's a different one, but yeah.
I just each individual governing body obviously would adopt a document to deal with that, whether they're taking the advice from the authority or using their standard document. I don't know. What's the committee's feelings on that? Anything, nothing worth having a quick look at or a discussion about or an agenda item at some future time? Councillor Pitt.
Yeah, I just wonder whether it might be a piece of work that would be beneficial for the Scrutiny Committee to look at all of our guidance documents, guidance policies for schools, to work through them over time to see that they are still current and taking into account the changes in the real world that go around them. Just to give an extra piece of insurance to everyone.
I could have sworn, Councillor Pete, you said all of them then.
I did say all of them. I think it's important that the guidance documents that we are giving to schools should be retained and up to date, and having an independent view of where they are from a lay perspective, because after all, it is governors that are implementing these policies. Having that lay view and additional support would probably be worthwhile. I mean, obviously, there needs to be a prioritisation, and some of the things are more obvious or more grounded in legislation than others. But I think it would give additional confidence to governing bodies and parents that we are keeping on top of emerging developments, and AI is a classic one.
Okay, let's get that as an agenda item, and we'll make a start and see how we get on with social media, AI, etc. So, yep, Councillor Chloe will put that on the work programme at some point. Councillor Gareth, are you coming in on that? So sorry, Councillor Gareth. Sarah, you've got your hand up first.
Yes, if that's all right, Chair.
Yep.
Many of the policies will be governed by different fora. So say, for example, HR policies will go through the schools policy forum and will be linked to employment law, etc. And then our sort of information compliance policies will be guided by our information compliance team as well. So all policies should have oversight by a relevant group of officers.
Okay, let's as I said, let's try with the social media and see how that operates and where we get to with that, and then we can decide whether we do other policies at that moment in time. Councillor Gareth, followed by Councillor Bryn.
Yeah, mine's linked. I think Councillor Pete stole some of my thunder, Chair. I went to part of the Digital Discovery Day in County Hall last Tuesday, and I think there's aspects of that would be useful for this Scrutiny Committee to have an understanding of how that could be AI, etc., could be used in the schools arena.
Okay, yeah, no, we'll take into account. Councillor Bryn.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place to look at it, but what I think it needs to be looked at is there's got to have some rapid revisions of transport policies as the schools develop. Hopefully, more Welsh medium provision and equity is an issue. So we need to look at how the transport policy is adapting to help with that provision of equity.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. It's reoccurring, isn't it? And it will be on our future work program. But yeah, I think your point there is very relevant. So that we need to make sure it comes at the appropriate time. Yeah, no, that's fine, Bryn. And apologies, Bryn. I know Catherine spoke to you that our failure to get a translation for you, but we do apologise. But I think you understand the situation we're in at the moment. But there we go. Sarah, you still got your hand up. I'm assuming that's from before. Okay. Anything else on the work programme? No. Has Lindsay been able to join us?
She hasn't as yet, Chair. She's transferring everything over onto her phone. She works laptop.
Okay. Members, in your hands, do you wish to move on to school's outturn report, or wait for Lindsay to come in? I was hoping to cheer you all up with the music plan before going into school budgets, really. But what's your feelings? Move on, or Councillor Gareth?
Yeah, can I just seek clarity, please, Chair? Because the agenda says just school outturn report, but the paperwork we got covers school outturn plus future year's budgets.
Yeah.
I assume it's the latter that we're considering, not just the outturn reports.
Yeah, no, it's everything, is my understanding. It's just it's been marked as that as an agenda item. Okay, shall we move on? Shall we move on to that? Good.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. So that will be item 8 on the agenda. We are discussing this as a general overview, and then we're going into an exempt item at 10 if there is comments in relation to individual schools, etc. So just bear that in mind. Councillor Peter, you introducing, or are we just going directly across to Nancy?
I'll introduce very briefly. The report you've got in front of you is the outturn from the last financial year and the current state of play in respect to school budgets going forward into the next financial / academic year. You'll notice 2 sections to it. The first one, which is in the full public document, outlines the overarching position of the authority, but it also touches on and names the individual schools where there are concerns that are being expressed by request of recovery plans. The second section, which is in the exempt item, goes into the financial detail of all of those schools, which is why it's exempt. And we'll be touching on that, I presume, Chair, after the all of the other business that we've conducted today. So I'm going to pass you across to Nancy Owen, who's going to be taking you through the paper. And I've got Ammon Orrell, Sarah Quibell, Marianne Evans, and the director, Dr. Richard Jones, here to make specific comments on anything that you want to raise.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Nancy, before we hand over to you, I'm just letting you know, particularly Councillor Lucy, I'm transferring from my phone to my laptop now. So if I disappear for a minute, apologies, but if I don't, all good. So Nancy, in your hands. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members and officers. So just to take you through the Cabinet report that's in front of you here today, which sets out the outturn position up to the 31st of March 2024, and looking ahead then at the 24-25 budgets that have been received from schools passed via their governing bodies for the 24-25 financial year, and estimates based on structures and estimated draft funding that's also been provided to our schools looking ahead up until 26-27 based on pupil number projections that we've worked on with our schools. So if I just start with the outturn position for the 31st of March, you can see from the report in section 3 that the cumulative reserves left at the end of the 31st of March 2024 were 891,000 for schools delegated and individual schools specifically. And that compares to a projected surplus balance at May 23, when schools submitted these plans at the start of the financial year, of £612,000 surplus. So there is a slight improvement at year end based on schools' projections at the start of the year. Not as much as we've seen in previous years, but a slight improvement nevertheless. The actual draw from reserves was 5.8 million. So schools have significantly depleted their reserves in the 23-24 financial year. Just in terms then, some of that detail around those balances, in section 3.3, we look at the number of schools holding a surplus position. at the 31st of March, there were 68 schools with a £6.5 million surplus balance, and that compared to 77 schools previously with a balance of 10.3 million in this time last year's report. So we are seeing that management down of reserves and surplus balances from the start of the year to the end of the year. And then in terms of the deficits, we are seeing and have seen an increase in the combined cumulative deficit to 5.7 million. And that's in relation to 20 schools in the financial year we're in. And that was the previous year, 3.7, based on 11 schools. So we are seeing a slight an increase there in the cumulative deficit in terms of the schools delegated and the management down of the surplus balances that schools held. In terms of then moving forward to the 24-25 year, we ask schools to submit budget plans by the 1st of May. That's the deadline. It's in our scheme. And then we've assessed them and gone back to schools with any requests for recovery plans dependent on the financial position of each of those schools. So just a little bit of an outline really where we've been with the budget process for 24-25, where the Cabinet and ultimately Council on the 22nd of February set out an increase to the school's delegated budget of an initial £3.6 million, which subsequently was then increased to 4.2 following some additional funding that was passported through to the local authority. So that's for 24-25. And just to ask members to look that when they are looking at the future year's budgets from 25-26 onwards, the big change from the previous estimates the schools were provided with is in respect of the cash flat position. So from 25-26, the beginning of 25-26, the figures in Appendix B assume no increase to the school's delegated budget. Of course, that will all be discussed now as the council begins and has started its 25-26 budget process. So just want to draw members' attention really to the funding estimates that have been built in to the figures in Appendix A. So what does that mean we've collected these balances? Well, what it does mean is that at the moment, without any further action in 24-25 by schools in respect to some of the deficits we are seeing, which we'll come on to, that collectively schools intend to spend £3.3 million more than the resources available to them, which would leave, without any further action on those balances, a £2.4 million deficit estimated at the end of March 25. And then just to summarise really in terms of the breakdown of those differences really in terms of surpluses and deficits, we have got 63 schools that are budgeted to be in a cumulative surplus at the end of March 25, which meets the criteria to be approved under the scheme. It's slightly less than this time last year in a comparable. But the main focus really of our attentions then is in relation to those schools where they are forecasting a cumulative deficit position. And again, you can see from section 4.4 of the report, there were 23 schools now this year that are projecting cumulative deficits, which compares to 21 from this time last year. Of those 23, 3 of those schools do have a licensed budget, which means that they have a plan around paying any deficit that they go into in 24-25 back. For the remaining 20, they were written to ask for recovery plans by the 12th of July. We did have one school that failed to submit a ratified budget. They are a new school that's opening at the 1st of September. We have now received that budget since the timing of this report. And then just to finish up on section 4.5, where we list the schools that we have written to, I think it's also worth saying that our work hasn't stopped there with our schools, and schools' work hasn't stopped there. schools are looking ahead past 24-25, where there are cumulative deficits in 25-26. We have asked schools to submit recovery plans before the summer to address those. And for those schools projecting cumulative deficits for 26-27, we have asked them to come back with recovery plans by the 30th of September to allow that lead-in time that we know that's required, particularly when we've got the crossover of financial and academic years to grapple with as well. Okay, so that's the overview, Chair, if that's okay. I don't know if Anwen or Dr. Richard Jones want to come in at all, but...
No, there's an opportunity there before we go to questions, if you so wish.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Chair. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Nancy. Thank you very much, Nancy, for taking us through. I just wanted to add on the element there that Nancy has said regarding the schools requiring to submit financial budget plans and recovery plans. Some were due in by last Friday, some by the end of September. Just to reassure you, what we've done since the beginning of June is we've commissioned independent advisors to either support with all the secondaries and all age schools, some of the primaries that require deficit plans, and special schools to support and challenge them in submitting recovery plans. So that work is ongoing at the moment.
Okay. Dr. Richard, any comment, or should we go straight to questions?
Move to questions, Chair.
No, that's absolutely fine. Members, please indicate. I think we're all being shy here now. Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously I used to be on learning skills scrutiny previously. I haven't been on for a few years. So it's interesting, let's use that word, to come back and read these papers. One thing that strikes me is when we have a school with a deficit budget, we hear there that they require support and work from officers to help them bring that budget back in to balance. And there's clearly a cost to that in terms of officer time. And I just wonder what's going wrong. So are we missing a trick somewhere in that if we invested more early on before these budgets were set, that schools would have the skills to set a balanced budget? Or is it genuinely, are we at the point where that is now impossible, that there's simply not enough money and it doesn't matter how much hand-holding officer support we get, that schools will never be able to balance their budgets? It just feels like deja vu, and I know officers have been doing this work for years. They've been working hard, they've been doing these surgeries and this support, and yet here we are still with these charts that have an awful lot of red. So are we missing a trick somewhere?
I'm not going to bring you back in there, Nancy. It's a good opening salvo there, Councillor Angela. But I'm guessing that theme will come in from other councillors as well. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gareth and then Councillor Allard. We'll make a note of the different points, but let's not be repetitive. So we'll take Councillor Gareth and then Councillor Allard.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Just one for Nancy to come back in on at some stage. She mentioned that the one school that hadn't submitted their budget by the deadline have now submitted it. Perhaps she could at some stage during the meeting give, whether in this session or in the confidential session, gives indication what their cumulative or deficit is at the 31st of March 25. The other thing that I would find very useful is that we've got the pupil numbers of 24, 25 in the Appendix A. I would find useful to know, because the outturn figures are based on the figures in January 23. So it'd be useful to have the pupil numbers used for the previous year, the current year, and the next 2 years as well, whether that's on a spreadsheet or whether that's in some other form. The other thing, I know we can calculate it, Nancy, but it'd be good to have the opening balance brought forward. You put it in table, whichever one is. There's a table in your report that you give the opening balance as at the 31st of March 23. That'd be really good to have that per school on the basis. And if I was being really picky, could we also have the delegated budget for the 24-25 year somewhere within the report. The other question I wanted to ask is it possible to show for each individual school what the impact of the new formula is for both the 24, 25 and subsequent years? I'm a governor of a 2-teacher school, and I will be requesting a deep dive from officers. We're lucky at the moment. We've got a significant surplus. We're lucky at the moment, but I've looked at it every which way I can, and I cannot get the budget to balance in 26, 27, 27, 28, etc. I think I'll leave it there. Oh, no, the other thing I wanted to raise, Chair, is in terms of the sit for code, Welsh Government's legislation, etc., what can we allow as an authority the schools to set the budgets at? My understanding is that we must set a cumulative surplus across all schools, and by allowing schools to go into a cumulative deficit, we may be in breach of some legislation. I'll leave it there.
Okay, my plan didn't quite work then, so we're going to come to you there, Nancy. So bearing in mind Angela's comments, and Gareth raised a few issues there, so we better deal with them, or we'll miss out. So Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Angela's point, I think, you know, there are a lot of reasons why some schools reach this position in terms of where they are with their balances, and we've seen that over a number of years, the difference in the schools that are here today that might have been here last year, and the ongoing work that takes place. I think it's sort of like a three-pronged approach, really, where we're looking at working with the schools, with Anwen Orrell's team, the school improvement team, and the skills that are out there in respect of the financial element. And you know, we can go back to the Estin report of 2019 where it said about continuing to improve financial awareness within our schools and mitigating those deficits. We do put a lot of work in with our schools in the spring term in terms of the financial surgeries. I know you acknowledged that before.
42.
I think there is, you know, there's further work and an ongoing piece to do with regards to the finance element. We've got a plan in place in terms of the actions we want to go through. I think there's some strengthening and improvement we can do in terms of the finance support. We've already, as a support to schools and the secondary, all age and special sector, increase the finance support available to those schools, really. What we're also doing as well to support our schools is bringing in some new school budget software, which will mean that we've got business managers and school staff spending less time on manual spreadsheets and more time concentrating on forecasting the deficit, any deficits budgets, or for those schools that may have surpluses still as well, you know, the surpluses and the spending of those to support any improvements that are required in the school. You know, some things happen, as I know some of you all be aware as governors, where, you know, the school has then got to react to those changes in terms of mitigating any problems that occur. So we are trying significantly before we get to this point, Councillor Angela, to suggest ways to schools when we meet with them. Ultimately, is the governing body's decision what budget it puts forward to the local authority. And once we've had those submittals, we work with them. And like I say, part of our response is going forward in respect of the work that Anwen, as head of services, commissioned as support to schools in terms of independent support across the sectors. And we've got some new support in terms of finance and the software. And like I say, I think there's some increased monitoring that can be done. And I know Councillor Gareth mentioned that, which I think is an excellent idea in terms of the monitoring coming through and the overview in terms of school budgets into this arena. We do have regular insights with the service over the balances, and we're going to have increased monitoring where we need to have that any further. So there's quite a few things going on, but sometimes, you know, some things are a matter of circumstance, and probably you've got some mixed items depending on what school you look at, really. But you say work is ongoing and increasing, and they were very difficult financial surgeries this year. you know, in the years that I've sat in them, I have to say, you know, some of the meetings that we held, we had nearly 2 or 3 follow-ups for some of the schools to support them. You know, we only offer one meeting through the service level agreement, but it just shows that, you know, the commitment to work with those schools to help them with putting forward a balanced budget. So there was additional work done to meet with schools who were struggling really and in different options and ideas. So that I'm not sure if that covers off your question, but just come back on that. Yeah.
We hear what you're saying, Nancy. We really do, and we don't underestimate the amount of work which is going on. But there is a massive but. You know, we've got some massive deficits here, and schools aren't coping with it. And schools are saying to us, and bearing in mind that most of us are governors, schools are saying to us, there's no low-hanging fruit left. And they can look at them documents and work as hard as they can, but there's nowhere to go. And it's either curriculum or teachers that are going by the wayside. And you know, these figures are stark. 2.36 by the end of this financial year, 7.58 by March 26, and 15.7 by March 27. So I would suggest, no matter how much work, and we're not underestimating the work and the effort that is being put in, but schools can't get there. And that's the worry, you know. So, but yeah, we hear the efforts and what's being made, but something drastic or radical has got to happen. So can you just address some of Gareth's points? I'm sure other councillors have got the similar comments to myself to be made, and we understand it's difficult, but we've got schools in desperate situations.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to touch on Councillor Gareth's, we can come back with that information to you in respect of, you know, the pupil number trend. I know, thanks very much for raising those. They're improvements that we can make when the report comes next, but we can send them through to scrutiny after the meeting as well in terms of the pupil number trend. I know, for example, with a pupil number trend, and I know Marianne's here in the meeting as well, where we are seeing, you know, decline in pupil numbers now. And schools, you know, need to grapple with that as well as the financial situation. So, you know, we do work, schools do work well on their pupil number projections. And in terms of then, like say, the delegated budget and the impact of the formula, you know, the impacts of the formula is particularly pertinent, I think, by Councillor Gareth really here today in respect of some of the changes that schools saw when they set their budgets. So, you know, up until February, we knew there were formula changes coming, and you know, there were impacts done, you know, in terms of those impacts on the formula really, and for schools, you know. However, once all the impact is known, when you've rerun the formula, it's schools then dealing with that. We have got a 50% introduction of the new formula in 24-25, and then the 100% kicks in for 25-26.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Moving to Councillor Allard and then Councillor Bryn, followed by Margaret.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points for clarity, but before I do that, really, I completely sympathise with the finance team and the schools officers as well. They've been given an impossible task. The cabinet and the council who set the budget for the previous number of years have given the officers and schools management team an absolutely impossible task in this situation. We can see some schools which had relatively healthy budgets, surpluses, and it's you know, I can see one on the list there of £80,000, and it's been blown out in 1 year. So they've got to address that in the next financial year. And it's really difficult to do so. That's, you know, that's equivalent of 1.5, 2 teachers, isn't it? Out to a small school is quite really difficult. But just for a little bit of clarity on this, in 2.1, you talk about total delegated spend of £91.3 million in the last financial year. The base budget for that year was just under £84 million. Can you explain the difference? Is that solely the post-16 spend plus a few other grants added in, or is that including the all the use of reserves as well? Because there's about £5.8 million of reserves used. And then this year's base budget is only 87 million, which is less than the total spend last year. So that's going to be a really challenging position when you see significant increase in staff costs and other costs as well. You know, I don't know, 85, 90% of the delegated is spent on staffing. I'm guessing it's getting nearer the 90% now than it was a few years ago. And we've asked so just a little bit of clarity around that. You use an interesting phrase about managing down surpluses. Generally speaking, that was possibly true, Nancy, but then you've got schools in significant deficit already, going into further deficits. So I don't think that's a particularly good use of words there. It's certainly not managing down. It's I'm not sure what you'd call it, Nancy, but it's and these figures do cover, when you average out things, it do cover a multitude of sins in this. But we mustn't forget the impact on pupils. In this is you know, we can talk about these finance figures for as long as we like, but it's the impact on pupils and the education they receive. You know, we're seeing a lot of teachers teaching out of their speciality, especially in secondary schools. They're covering a number of subjects. What impact is that having on the results of schools? How many, you know, what's the average class size? Is that changing, you know, the ratio between pupils and staff? It'd be interesting to see how that has changed over the last couple of years, and also the number of staff employed within schools. How many less teachers? How many less classroom assistants? How many less support in the background in the offices across the school estate? I'd like to understand that. That would be a fairly easy thing to achieve, because they all go through Powers Payroll, you know, the trend system. So it'd be good to see the trends alongside the pupil numbers, the trends in employment. But just a little bit of that clarity around that £91.3 million first, Nancy. Diolch.
Thank you, Nancy.
Am I to go back there? Come in, Chair, yeah?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just to clarify, so the 91.3 million in section 2.1 of the report is the delegated amount to individual school budgets. The 84 that you're referring to then, Councillor Aled, in respect to the information that's held, the base budget, is the net amount. So we start within that 84, you've got the income that we get in from Welsh Government, and in 23-24 we also had the £2.5 million. So you start with a gross amount of 91.3, which goes through the funding formula out to schools, and that includes a post-16 allocation as well as the foundation allocation. But the actual net delegated budget held by the authority includes then the income coming in to net that spend off that we're giving through the formula to schools. But, you know, if you look at the FRM, the finance resource model from 23-24 to 24-25, you can see the net delegated budget reported increasing then from the 84 to the 87.
Yes.
What we give to schools is more than that, because it's the gross amount, which includes the post-16 as well. But you will also have items such as recharges held in that 87 as well. But the majority of the difference from the gross amount given to schools and the budget that we report as a local authority in our budget papers is any income that we get in to offset those allocations. Like I say, in the main for 24-25, it is post-16 from Welsh Government.
Okay, just so the 87 base for this current financial year, what do you expect the gross to be there then?
I think it was somewhere around 91.8 million. I'd have to double check completely.
So that's hardly changing at all then.
No, but
Mhm.
what members will need to appreciate in that respect, in that change, is that the foundation phase money that was previously allocated through the funding formula, which totaled 2.5 million, is no longer in the funding formula given to schools, because Welsh Government have got a national formula in place that provides that allocation to schools now in the form of individual grant allocations that have been run through a national formula. So the cost of the formula to the local authority is reduced. The income then is, instead of sat in the delegated budget held in the authority, it's sat in those allocations that Welsh Government have published as a school standards grant now going forward. So they've rationalised two grants, which were the Education Improvement Grant and the Accelerated Learning Grant, and they have put a national formula in place. So we're subject, so because of that national formula, we had to remove that grant income and keep it within the allocations that schools were getting. So there will be changes, as you know, to any formula allocation, because it's how we were giving it out to schools versus how the national formula for Wales is now giving it out. That's already in these budgets, and schools are working through those changes.
Okay. And would there be winners and losers between different schools within that as well?
Yes.
And is that reflected in the projected deficits and the, so all that's included within the appendix?
And actually with the national formula, Welsh Government have given us the detail around how those, the individual indicators, like the powers formula as such, and we know how we get our funding in as a local authority. So I would go as far to say that it's given us more detail in around using our projected pupil numbers and estimates to provide that information in a better detail really to schools, because we've got that complete breakdown from Welsh Government going forward.
Okay, that's good. And perhaps I shouldn't go into too much detail, Chair. Really, sorry, I'll draw a line there. I just running around top slicing and the fact that he's going through certain grants. It limits Powys's ability to change the service or vary the service to deliver it more efficiently, possibly. But that's probably a fun argument for another day, I'm guessing. But the impact on pupils, I'm guessing that's more Anwen's stuff, really. Or Richard's.
Yeah. Let's leave that there. We'll pick that up. Obviously, we've got a lot of hands up and a lot of points to cover off. One point, and I'm sorry to go back now. Councillor Gareth raised the point about compliance and where are we setting a budget for this? There's obviously questions around balanced budgets, focus on well-being and future generations. I just wonder if anybody would pick up Councillor Gareth's comment. He mentioned SIPA and whether we are compliant by producing these forward projections as they are. Obviously, they've got massive implications on the balanced budget of the whole council. So I'm just wondering, are we actually compliant by producing projected documents such as this? That was the gist of your argument there, wasn't it, Gareth?
It was, Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. I don't want to miss that one out if possible.
Shall I come in here? Would that be helpful?
Yes, I wasn't sure who that was. Sorry.
Anne.
It's Anne Phillips.
All right, yeah, go on, Anne.
Hi there. Yes, I don't think the comment from Councillor Gareth about sit for compliance. It isn't that we have a sit for compliant. Actually, there isn't anything within the sit for guidance that says we have an issue with schools if we don't set balanced budget or have deficit reserves. That is an issue. So, but Councillor Gareth, if you want to pick up with me what you're specifically referring to behind the scenes, I'm more than happy to have a chat with you and then feedback. So before we clog up a meeting around a level of sit for detail, probably not for this arena, if that's okay. We have, of course, got an issue with schools in deficit, and the level of deficit going forward is one of concern. But then, just as we start the budget round now, looking at the whole budget picture, we have great concerns about going forward. The financial projections for the council going forward generally is one of a significant deficit, and the outlook at the moment isn't very enchanting, because the financial projections coming out of Welsh Government, out of the national picture, are going to be hard. So the whole council is going to have to look carefully at how the heck it bridges that gap, and schools being one of those. So we have got schools deficits that are growing, as well as the wider council position, which is going to be hard, and we're going to have to think in the round how we're going to manage that, because we're not going to be able to continue to do everything, and maybe in the way we have done them before.
Okay, and I welcome them comments. So just one final comment from myself. Does school budget actually become a strategic risk now then?
Does it become a strategic risk? I think at the moment, our number one risk on the risk register is ability to deliver an overall council managed budget. That continues to be the number one risk, because we have got a big concern about taking an affordable budget, not only through next year, but the following 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the medium strategy. That is already on the risk register, right at the top of the risk plan.
Thank you, Anne. Councillor Peters indicated, and then it comes to Councillor Bryn, followed by Margaret, and then Gareth. Councillor Gareth. Councillor Peters.
One of our big challenges at the moment is that we are without a national 3-year budget. There's a comprehensive spending review will be coming through in the autumn, which will give us clearer direction as to what the Welsh Government budgets are likely to be over those 3 years. So at the moment, we're having to work on budget projections that are coming out of essentially academia, which is why we're talking about flat cash for the next 2 years, as that is the predicted position that we are likely to be in based on the evidence available to us. Now, obviously, that is creating huge challenges, not just for schools, but across the authority as a whole. But obviously, as we move further into the budget cycle, we should have clearer indications, probably with the autumn statement from the Chancellor, as to actually what we are going to be getting. So that's where we are at the moment. And that's why we're looking at such challenging positions. I think David has just indicated he might want to expand on that a little bit further.
Okay, not wishing to be bogged down, but we have got comment coming in from Councillor David and Dr. Richard.
Yeah, I'll be brief, Chair, if I may. Just to say that that there was comment made about this cabinet's underfunding, for want of a better term, schools. I think we've got to be very careful if we're going to say that, because what is clear is every penny that this cabinet has received from Welsh Government for the last 2 budgets has been passported over to schools in total. If you go back to prior to the pandemic, school budgets were in a difficult position then. They were in deficit. Can't run away from that. The pandemic came along. Unfortunately, at the end of the pandemic, there were significant grants came in from Welsh Government to support us through the pandemic, and that put us in a position where we had about £8 million surplus over all schools by about March 21, thereabouts 2021. And that set us up, and that took us into an extremely difficult period of high inflation rates, high energy costs, etc., etc. We all know what happened there. Unfortunately, that did create a bit of a buffer zone to take us through that very, very difficult period. Now, I think Councillor Pete and I think Nancy touched on this. If you look at the projections going forward over the next few years, that they're based on a flat settlement. Now, hopefully things might be a little bit better than that, which might give us a little bit of leeway with regard to school budgets in particular, and indeed the council budget overall. I did see some early fiscal analysis just prior to the election that seemed to be indicating that at best we might expect about 1.1%. As far as Wales is concerned, but that isn't confirmed. Now, obviously, if that is the case, it does give us a little bit of extra money to play with over those years, and that might help us manage this situation a little easier. But I'm confident that as far as the education team are concerned, they're doing some marvelous work. You know, the teams around the schools. I know that we've got some independent experts coming in to look at schools that are in particular trouble. We've got the deep dives, etc., etc. And the priority's got to be to get in-year balanced budgets. Well, once we achieve that, then we can start looking at the cumulative deficits and work from there. But I do appreciate that as you look at it on paper, then there are some alarm bells ringing. But in saying that, if you look at the projections for the authority as a whole, you know, you're looking at a potential deficit of £18 million in next year's budget, and anything up to £41 to £70 million over the next 4 years. So yes, you know, we've got to say, you know, what's the impact of the situation in education our children, but we've also got to consider, you know, what the impact's going to be on our social services budget on the elderly and infirm, and we've got to get that balance right. So there's a challenge in the authority as a whole, and that's something we've got to address, and that's something we will address, and I'm pretty confident, you know, that we will get there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor David. I'm sure there'll be a response to your comments there. I'm going to take Richard now, and then I'm going to move on to councillors who've got their hands up for some time. Dr. Richard.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair. I won't labour the point, but you know, we know that our schools are in a really challenged position at the moment. As Councillor David said there, you know, the settlement is looking like cash flat, and of course, schools then are negotiating the challenge of you know, rising costs and pay awards, rising energy costs in particular. I do just again want to reference the team around the school work, because you know, what we are doing in that work is working with schools to look to see, are schools being as absolutely efficient as they can? And secondly, working with schools to understand why they're overspending in schools that actually are. And for me, what's encouraging about that work that's going on, that work is being led by a head teacher who's not only skilled in financial management, but also in school improvement. So we aren't neglecting the relationship between the financial management of a school, whole school improvement, and of course then the standards and the provision that we're able to offer the children and young people in Powys. So I did just want to emphasise that point, that the work that we're doing at the moment is as much supporting schools to balance their in-year budgets as far as possible, but also to gather more evidence around the reasons why schools haven't been able to balance their budgets in the past. Diolch.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Bryn, you've been waiting some time.
Okay, diolch, Gwynfor. Yeah, I mean, going back to what Angela saying a long time ago, really, these schools, is it possible for them to balance their budgets and so on? My comments more relevant to primary schools than to secondary schools, but I'm aware of some medium-sized schools on a Powys scale that are all relatively small on a national scale, but a medium-sized Powys schools, very similar numbers of pupils, and some have practically full-time teaching heads, some have practically zero-time teaching heads. Okay, a teaching head is an expensive teacher, but a non-teaching head is an even more expensive administrator, I guess. Is there any correlation being carried out to see which how many what level of teaching is expected of a head teacher and how that correlates to the financial state of the school? Is there any kind of expectation put on schools to say how much you'd expect heads to, you know, I mean, local management of schools has been introduced since the 1980s now, but I mean, how much teaching is expected of heads within schools? I mean, what we ask our heads to do, well, in some schools, what our heads do, we just absolutely could not ask them to do as governors, and you know, and they do so much. You know, you just got you don't have that kind of power to expect that of teachers. But in other schools, you wonder if they're doing as much as there's a huge imbalance. There seems to be a huge flexibility in what the head can do and what the head can't do. And is there any kind of correlation to kind of standardize that across schools in Powys? And would it help the primary schools in particular be able to balance their budgets? And how would it help indicate which schools are actually viable and which ones aren't?
Okay, I think we get your point there, Bryn. Anwen was quick with her hand up, so we're going to go to Anwen.
Diolch, David. Thank you, Chair, for that. Diolch, Cynghorydd Bryn, for your question. So I'm going to come back firstly and touch on yours and Angela's, Councillor Angela's question first, and then I'll come around your question around the element of the delegated budget and do in middle-sized schools, do the head teacher teach or not, if you don't mind. So one thing I think really, really importantly, coming back to your question, Councillor Bryn and Angela, is that we've got to remember that the delegated budget, when our schools are forecasting, actually changes year on year. So Councillor Angela, sometimes it's very, very difficult for them to predict what's coming forward when it's either an increase or a decrease. So it's not because the heads aren't capable, the governing bodies aren't capable, but the goalposts are moving as well. And very often, especially in small schools, one element of change, such as a member of staff going off ill or a big property element coming in, sometimes actually causes unexpected conditions for them. So I've actually seen evidence firsthand of a school that has planned really, really effectively with a balanced budget, but lo and behold, next year, because of either income declining or increasing costs, such as pay pressures or inflation, etc., that even though it's predicted and they planned everything perfectly, lo and behold, next year, it doesn't work out as they'd planned. And I think a few councillors have asked about pupil numbers, but pupil numbers are also fluctuating quite a lot that actually can, in the end, cause issues. But to answer your question, Councillor Bryn, when we delegate budgets, it is delegated. So we've seen when we're working with primary schools and with secondary schools, some head teachers will say, I want to teach, and because my skill set is in the classroom and I want to be able to share my expertise, model effective teaching and learning. So they choose to teach and therefore use their budgets elsewhere, perhaps buy an extra admin to support them, etc. Whereas other members of head teaching and leadership teams choose to employ either a teacher or a HLTA to teach so that they can perhaps increase income by working, perhaps coaching and mentoring other head teachers or doing other external work. So there isn't an actual definition for you, Councillor Bryn, on what a school can and can't do. It is delegated, and very much it is the decision of the individual head teacher and governing body what's right for that school and the skills of the head teacher. So I'm just thinking about one review we've just done. The head teacher doesn't teach, but she actually brings in a lot of income by coaching and mentoring, where the school down the road, the head teacher of a similar school may teach. Am I making sense? So it's very much a school by school element.
Would you say that there's no correlation between the financial situation of the school and the fraction of time that the head in a medium to small size primary school, that you don't think there's any correlation between the financial situation of the school and the fraction of time spent teaching then?
Well, actually, we're beginning to see more and more that perhaps it's the larger schools that are struggling more than the smaller schools. So no, not at the moment. Some of our larger primaries are struggling as well now.
Yeah.
Diolch.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Margaret now, and I recognise you got your hand up, Dr. Richard, and then Gareth, and then we'll come to you, Dr. Richard. Margaret, please.
Oh, fine. Thank you. First of all, Nancy, I do want to say you are almost have an impossible job, and you're trying, the work everybody's doing is much appreciated. But my particular concern, which follows on from some comments, is the impact on children. And so the figures, fine, I can look at those, but it's the impact on children. And I'm particularly concerned when I talk to people in schools about ALN at this moment. I think we're at a very critical stage with ALN, with the new requirements of schools and how this is going to be monitored on in a financial way when it needs to link with the impact it's had with children. But I really feel those figures and what how we monitor is vital for children, for schools, and for the general public to understand, because there is just not enough money, I'm sure, to be able to provide the support that is needed for some of our children. And we know what we're hearing nationally about different support that's required. And I really do, it really concerns me, particularly this aspect in Wales, because we've had the issue with schools now having, and I don't disagree, I'm not commenting on that. It's just the fact that this has come when budgets are so tight. And I just fear, and I know schools and staff are really worried about meeting the needs. And I don't mean older children, I mean from the day they start school, because we should be identifying and dealing with this thing then.
I really do think it's a point well made, Margaret. And we certainly recognise your comments, and I don't think there is an answer to that question. We do find ourselves in a situation which isn't going to improve the education of our children and their welfare at this moment in time. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, just to follow up quickly on that point that Margaret made, she said from the day they start school. I think that's too late. It needs to be from the day they start, any early years provision, any involvement from the sensory services team.
You are right, Gareth.
Etc. You know, I've got I don't know if she is now a daughter-in-law, I think perhaps. I'll look for Anya to nod her head or not, who works in sensory services, and she works on children from the day they're born. Just a couple of points. Can I just go back to the foundation phase grant and the transfer from delegated budget to grant funding? Perhaps not the answer for today now, Nancy, but whether we're a net winner or a net loser from that transfer. Have we lost? Do we get more in grant than we are funding through the formula, or vice versa? The second point is, I assume, Nancy, you sit on Adu Finance. I'm just wondering, do we have an understanding of what the school budget's positions are across Wales? And the third point, Chair, I think is essential. Now, I used to sit in Nancy's seat. It's a hell of a job, pardon my language, but the one aspect I always found with governors and members was that they could understand where they're spending the money, but their understanding of how the money comes into the school's budgets was not as strong. And I think perhaps we need a member development session on that. You know, I don't know how the formula works, and it's something I need to do as a member of this scrutiny committee from now on.
Okay, that's a relevant point. Nancy, any comment on Gareth's initial point?
The foundation phase, the overall grant level, Councillor Gareth, that we were receiving from Welsh Government for Education Improvement Grant and Accelerated Learning has not reduced. I think it went up by about 1% overall for us as a local authority. But as I touched on, I can't think who it was with, Councillor Allen, there are winners and losers based on the removal of that from the formula versus a national formula that the Welsh Government have decided on. And I do agree as well with Gareth around the funding formula. Actually, we have been out to a governing body in the last few weeks to take them through the funding formula. It was really nice to be welcomed up there. And I think we need to consider that in the round of the alternative formats of financial training that we offer. you know, bite-sized pieces of training that the governors can take away to look at when they wish as well. So yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we can take on that improvement journey with the finance training and some of Councillor Gareth's comments. Yeah.
Thanks.
I've got Councillor Angela.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So listening there to all the comments, I mean, the problem is we all agree, don't we? So we all agree that it's incredibly challenging. We all agree that our officers are working extremely hard to support the schools and putting in this extra work. There's a cost to that, isn't there? We recognise that. We all agree that the funding formula is changed, but whether we really understand it or not, but that larger schools, I believe I'm right in saying, are probably gaining in that reshuffle of the funding formula. And yet we're going to see a bit later on that there are more larger schools with budget deficits. So I just feel that we're not coming up with any answers. We're all just making comment of what we all agree is an ongoing problem. And I can't see, as a school governor of over 20 years and a member of this committee previously, what we're going to do, what difference we can make. Because my real concern here, and Margaret highlighted it, is the outcomes for pupils. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that suffer. That is the point of education, isn't it? To the teaching and learning of our pupils. But we know that pupils are getting more challenging. We've got increasing numbers of pupils with ALN. Our schools are more inclusive, quite rightly so. But some of those pupils possibly don't have a labelled ALN condition, and yet they have challenging behaviours or issues that need support. And the only place that schools can go to address their budget deficits is in their staffing numbers. That's the only thing. You could turn off a few light switches, you could turn down the heating a bit. I mean, what else are you going to do? Stop sweeping the leaves on the path? I mean, seriously, the only thing schools can do is address their staffing. But they can't do that quick enough, because actually most of our schools have an idea of how many pupils are coming in September, but until they open the doors, there will be some pupils who just arrive. So how do they budget for that? Because one or two pupil change in numbers can mean a difference between a member of staff coming or going, but it's too late. Once you've got that contract, you've employed that person, two pupils don't turn up in September, your budget is blown. What I'm really struggling with is what we can do. We're on such tight margins. Where do we go with this? I mean, how are we going to get our head around this?
In some respects, Councillor Angela, it's a very good conclusion, really. At the end of the day, it's the sharing of that pie. Councillor David was very eloquent in saying, well, look, if we give more money to schools, it can impact some other service. We fully appreciate that. We really do appreciate that. But at the end of the day, we've got a situation, and you know, it's the first time ever that we've got schools going into an overall deficit position. Year 2, worse again, and year 3, absolutely desperate. So we as an education committee have just got to maintain that we need a bigger share of that pie. The one comment which I made, and Nancy and Marianne, you both got your hands up. The one point, we've been hearing about deep dives for some time. You know, we've seen deep dives in schools with massive deficits. We're not seeing improvement in them schools, and we'll discuss them later. But you know, we're getting into deep dives into some schools which are starting to struggle. And you know, and Angela mentioned in relation to turning the lights off, etc. These things have been done, and there's nowhere to go now, and it's curriculum and teachers that are going to suffer. So that's an overall picture. But I'm coming to Nancy and then Marianne at this moment in time. Nancy, and then
Thank you, Councillor Gwynfor. Yeah, I mean, we know that it's not just Powys, don't we? We're, you know, all local authorities are grappling with this at the moment, and I know Councillor Gareth touched on Adu Finance before. You know, it's been very difficult to estimate grants going forward because of where we are with the spending review. We're working on estimates, but I think there's a few things here. There's we touch on the funding formula, and we're going to enter into a review of the funding formula. We're looking at an evaluation of it. You know, we have changed our funding formula year after year after year, and obviously then that creates change in the system, and schools are then got to manage that change as well. So the last financial year we've just moved to now in 24-25, we've seen significant change to the funding of additional learning needs funding in the formula, coupled with the cash flat estimates. You know, where schools have seen a massive change from one set of figures they were working to another, and is trying to, like say, support them with those changes in relation to, you know, the formula and addressing that on a 50% basis the first year thereafter. But I think there's a few things, Councillor Andrea. We are seeing movement in the system, which I know we're going to talk about later on, in terms of school balances and things that schools are still pursuing with. Obviously, coupled with that then is the understanding of them moving towards making savings, and the impact, as Margaret and yourself and the rest of the Scrutiny Committee have echoed on, you know, fundamentally why we're all here, the learner, you know, fundamentally. But I think we've got the review of the funding formula, which will talk about the carving up of the pie, and an analysis to take forward based on that. And, you know, we've worked with Anwen and discussed this since she took up post around moving and taking some time to review that properly, looking for any changes to be implemented from April 26. But we've also got the evidence that will be collected as part of the in-depth reviews, and just bringing Anwen back in there around that, really, in terms of, you know, how far do we think our schools can go in terms of meeting the requirements of a balanced budget, what the impact is, and as now Councillor David has also touched on, then, you know, the council is obviously beginning its planning around the budget for 25-26. So I think there's a number of things now that aren't going to solve a problem here today, but a number of factors then that contribute into that overall position that we're seeing in Appendix A, and what impact can be made on that position through all those items that we've discussed today as well. So I just want to touch on that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Marianne.
Yeah, thank you all. Just following on really from what Nancy's been saying, and going back to Councillor Angela's points about, you know, where do we, what is the solution? What is the answer here? And I think I was thinking about the transforming education strategy. Transformation comes into play here as well, and what you've heard here today underpins the need for change in Powys. Unfortunately, the way school reorganisation is taken forward, it is a very cumbersome process, and it has to be, because it is a legal process. However, thinking of the transformation strategy itself, the key part of the transformation strategy is to improve learner entitlement and experience. And that's why we need to consider this with learners at the heart. So your questions about what's the impact on pupils within the system as it currently stands is very, very pertinent. But it's in order to address this, it has to be in the context of sustainable Powys, and it has to be a multi-pronged strategy, with transformation being one part of it, but all the other aspects that Anwen will take forward and Nancy around finances all come into it. But it has to be seen as there's no one answer that's going to make this all go away and we'll all be happy. It has to be seen as part of the bigger package. So I'm just putting that out there, because just for you to keep this in mind, this is a huge multi-pronged approach to sorting our schools out, but with the learners at the heart of it.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm going to Councillor Bryn now, and I'm going to say Councillor Bryn's got the last comment. Anything we haven't picked up on, we'll discuss, and recommendations when we get to this same item in when it goes to confidential, because we've got considerable agenda to move through afterwards. So, Councillor Bryn, sorry.
Yeah, well, it was probably very appropriate that Marianne spoke before me. I thought she was going to steal all of my thunder, and she probably has in a more politically sensitive way than I have. But it is ultimately, as far as Welsh medium education, or the total lack of it in parts of our county, one of the solutions that we are putting forward or proposing is that we need to get some kind of some kind of central contracts or shared staff between schools, which and that was aimed for getting some kind of equity in Welsh medium education, but it might have to happen to following straight on from Angela's comments about, your two kids go to one school instead of another school, and one school's already employed the teachers and is going to go into debt and all that. I mean, some kind of well, somebody within the council, I suppose, needs to really look into how central contracts can be created, if at all, and and are they a possible solution, or to help with these issues, because that's the kind of thing we're going to have to look at, I think.
Thanks, Bryn.
Yeah.
Certainly attempted a solution there. Grateful for that. Members, are you content that we leave that there as we stand now, and then come up with some recommendations and conclusions when we get to a confidential item? Is that a good suggestion? Yeah. Okay. Go on. Who was that?
It's me, Gwynfor, Councillor Gareth.
Go on,
Agreed.
Gareth.
Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, agreed. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Members, I'm in your hands now. Where do you want to go? Are we in a position to deal with our plan for music in Powys?
Yeah, let's cheer ourselves up.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. Lindsay, are you with us? Yes?
Hello, Jay. Yes. Huge apologies for not being able to join you earlier, but I'm here now. So I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, Lindsay, we've got your documents and everything. So I know we were very enthusiastic when you were with us back last year. So hopefully this will give us a bit of relief. But I do remind you, we are a bit limited to time now because we've got some heavy items. But yeah, let's hear what you've got to say.
Okay, I still have technical issues. I'm afraid you're going to have to share my PowerPoint for me, please. We're just trying to get it up.
Me and you both, Lindsay. I'm still on my phone. And
oh, bless you.
I know.
I'll do that for you now, Lindsay.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Sure.
But I should say I was going to share a very short video with you this afternoon that Eirik doesn't have. So I will pass it on to Kath to send to you, which for me sums up completely the National Music Plan and how it's sort of supported children and teachers in schools in Powys. And it's quite an emotional message from Calon of Erwin. So apologies for not being able to share with you this afternoon, but I'm sure that Kath gets it as soon as I finish presenting. But the National Music Plan has been a gift for the pupils in Powys, and we're in the last financial year. So we're currently operating our last sort of budget, and we're awaiting notification from the Welsh Government whether funding will be continued. Approximately 3-4 weeks ago, we met with Lynn Neagle, Cabinet Secretary for Education, all members of the National Music Service. Children presented and they played, and Mary Pritchard, who is the chair of the National Music Service, spoke about the impact of the plan. And Powys featured heavily in the presentation. I was really proud that Mary could share, the difference it's made to the children, and some of them are there on the screen in front of you, that the plan has had to them. But to be clear, the National Music Plan has enhanced music services and other local authorities in Wales, but in Powys, it's enabled us. It's enabled schools, teachers, self-employed musicians to have work. It's enabled the children to have instruments in their hands and to feel a sense of community, of belonging that only music can give you. Next screen, please, Eirik. So under the National Music Plan, under the terms and conditions, we have to provide first experiences. And as we spoke about last year, first experience is that 10-week set of a workshop where a professional musician goes into a class and works with one class for 10 weeks, building on a skill set. A class teacher must remain in the class. So we're giving professional development to that classroom teacher, we're upskilling the children and giving them belief that they can achieve, in the hope that that kind of that infectious attitude sort of spills out into other classrooms. The 10th week culminates in a showcase where parents are invited in, or the children perform to another class, or to the whole school, or to members in the sort of wider school community. Each school does it differently, but each school that I've been in or I've taught in with the first experiences has been a really positive experience. And I'm very proud to say that nearly 1,500 pupils have taken part since in this academic year, which really is quite a feat considering we don't have a music service. These children are in their second tranche, their second experience in their school. Some schools across Wales are still in their first set. So we are making steps forward. By the end of this financial year, every single primary school in Powys would have had their second set, their second delivery of first experiences. Next screen, please, Eirik. And Pupil Voice is very strong. It talks about joy, about fun, about their well-being, helping them settle into their school day, giving them a sense of purpose, of pride, how it alleviates their stage fright, how it means they can feel that they're part of the team. And the teacher's voice is equally as strong. Thank you, Lindsay. That's improved my well-being. Thank you for this. This has empowered me to teach music when I wouldn't have had that sort of confidence before. There has been no negative feedback after any of the first experiences in any cluster. And it's a very important time because with the development of the new curriculum, it's important for teachers to see the impact that expressive arts has on their children. That sense of inclusion. You know, Councillor Margaret spoke about ALN earlier on, and then certainly any school that I've gone in or any tutors gone in, is that it's an equal playing field, and potentially those children in the classroom who wouldn't have a voice, you put an instrument in their hand and they become head and shoulders above their peers. I've gone into schools where children have just arrived in Powys in Wales from another country and they cannot speak English. I put a musical instrument in their hand. They turn out to be the strongest player in the class and all of a sudden they're included. Next screen, please, Eirik. So what happens after first experiences? After every first experience, the children are given a certificate. And on the back of that is the message. They can access free instrumental lessons for a certain period of time to ensure that poverty isn't a barrier to them learning a musical instrument and that we're there to support. And one would hope that message is shared widely across the school. We always offer funded 10 weeks of instrumental lesson every term for those pupils eligible for EFSM. So in the autumn term, 143 EFSM pupils, spring term, 178 pupils, and this term so far, 135 pupils have received 10 weeks of funded instrumental lessons, either individually, if the instrument kind of demands that, or they're at that level for an individual lesson, or in small groups. But alongside that, we've also supported another 600 pupils in receiving taster sessions. So 5 to 10 weeks of funded lessons to give them a chance. Do they like this? To prove to their parents, you know, is it worth putting aside a little bit of their pocket money or paying a sum for them to have lessons in school? And some schools have really embraced that. So for example, you've got the brass children there, that's in the Crickhowell cluster. After a first experience, 18 children took up brass instruments in one school. We haven't had that in the whole of Powys in the past. In the Brecon cluster, 40 children from across the school took up instruments. And yes, some of them may continue, and some of them took the taster sessions, and that was enough for them. They had to go, and that's enough for me, that they've been given that opportunity to make that decision whether they want to pursue it or not. Next screen, please, Eirik. The music plan has created opportunities for music communities within Powys and wider to come together. So, for example, the Welshborough cluster is very successful with their first experiences. The high school music teacher doesn't work 5 days a week. So on her 5th day a week, she works for the music plan. And she goes into the cluster where our high school is, and she teaches first experiences to the feeder primary schools. Best transition ever. A chance to get to know those children, the talents or potential talent that will be coming to their school, and working with them. And Christine Evans, the teacher, takes her school jazz band in, concert band into the school. So as well as the first experienced children performing what they've learnt, Christine takes her children in the high school into the primary schools to show, you know, this is what you can be like. This is what you can aspire to. This is what is inspiring you to play. The music plan has enabled children of North Powys to come together. So working in conjunction with Monty Youth Music, one of our amazing music charities in Powys, we had a whole day workshop culminating in a concert in the evening. I think there's about 60, 70 children came together. The plan is for the next 2 terms, certainly I want to bring more children in Powys together to make music. And I'm especially proud that the National Music Service has brought regions together. So Powys work very closely with Ceredigion, Neath Talbot, Swansea, Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire Music Service. And as I speak, there are 6 pupils from Powys playing in a 96-piece symphony orchestra in Aberystwyth University, practicing for a concert tomorrow night in Branwyn Hall. For children in Powys to play with other pupils from across the region, Finlandia, the 1812 overture, the Aratunian trumpet concerto, where the soloist is a 16-year-old musician who is a finalist for Young Musician of the Year. She's a young lady from Pembrokeshire who is the most grounded and talented young musician I've ever seen. How else to motivate and inspire young musicians from Powys to be playing in an orchestra to accompany that amazing musician in a concerto? Thank you, Eirig. Live music is also part of the plan. So how else are we going to invite children to enjoy and embrace and evaluate music, understand music, to take up an instrument, or realise the pleasure that even listening music can bring you if we don't take live music to them? Because we know, especially sort of in Powys, that maybe travelling to a theatre or to the larger auditoriums, maybe in sort of North Wales or in South Wales, is tricky. So at a conservative estimate, 13,000 pupils have taken part in a live experience this year in Powys, right across Powys, in every single cluster, in primary schools, in secondary schools. That is a conservative estimate because we have also been able to virtual concerts, and it's very tricky to get the accurate data from the virtual concerts. A big friend, a massive friend, a huge support of the music plan has been the band of the Prince of Wales. So they're the army band based in Brecon. They've just recently finished a 4-day tour of Powys, where last week 1,700 pupils in Powys alone in 4 days had a live experience from the musicians in the band. Children in the schools were invited up to play alongside them. And on the first day, they did a side-by-side concert and rehearsal with Penrhyddertha Brass Band, our brass band in Powys, who won the prize at the Earth, which was amazing. The music plan has brought pop groups, string quartets, percussionists, beatboxers, all sort of musicians into school. In particular, there's a photograph of Callan O'Dera in there, where first experiences has really taken off. So we've got a wealth of string players in the Newtown cluster, which is incredibly exciting. Certainly one to watch. And as a result of that, a new charity has started in Powys called Having New Strings. They base themselves out of Callan O'Dera, and there are a high number of children starting to go to the school on a Friday night. Within that cluster, there are pockets of schools now that are setting up string ensembles, more notably Kerry School, which has, I think it has about 26 children in last count playing stringed instruments. We're going to have 4 younger children there, starting on quarter-sized double basses in September, and 3 of them on viola, 2 endangered instruments across the United Kingdom, possibly across the world. We got them starting to be taught in Powys. Kerry's goal is to have an ensemble in next year's Erith, and that's a common message across many schools in Powys. We want to have an ensemble. We want to put our school on stage. We want to put our cluster on the stage. So the music plan is having an impact. Next screen, please, Eirig. I remember in the last scrutiny, you know, I was challenged and rightly so. What about Welsh language provision? What about Welsh music? The music plan has taken several thousand children to Erith jamborees right across Powys. Candelas are in this photograph, and I think a fortnight ago it was Buncath. Please, if I've got the group wrong. We've had a Welsh language group go to Welsh language schools, working with the young children in reception with the music and movement in Welsh language, singer-songwriting sessions in the morning, and then a whole school gig, Welsh language in the afternoon. Incredibly moving, absolutely brilliant. And more notably, at May, during the Erith, 35p buzzers. Okay, so those plastic instruments that come up from Welsh Government. They played alongside other musicians across Wales, graduates from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and professional musicians from the BBC National Orchestra of Wales on the stage in the Erith. And again, the joy from those children and the message from their parents, thank you so much for this experience. Without the music plan, I don't think this would have happened. Next slide, please, Geirig. We have to think outside the box a little bit. Of course, we know that Powys is, geographically a really large county. And one thing that we have invested in is working with partners. We've worked with Live Music Now Cymru. So one Monday, half term, we've had something called Musical Mondays, where the invite has gone to every single school in Powys to log in and join a streamed live concert with the musicians, hosted in English in the morning and hosted in Welsh language in the afternoon. And this has been much more than music. The pupils have been able to engage with the musicians via the chat, finding out about pathways, what inspired those people to become musicians, how could they access musical instruments, how did they get their pathway of getting their job as a musician, suggestions and tips of becoming a better player. We've had opera singers, we've had Welsh language folk groups, we've had singer-songwriters, we've had an electronic pop star who has played on the stage in Glastonbury. We've had a beatboxer who was, for me, that was kind of game-changing in that we really sort of attracted some boys potentially who like that sort of thinking outside of the box and that different genre and approach to music. Next screen, please, Eric. So as well as bringing music into Powys, we've been able to take many children outside, more notably to the Millennium Centre in Cardiff and up to Venue Cymru in Llandudno. And one thing, there's been several concerts with National Orchestra of Wales, and in particular with the Welsh National Opera. And one memory that stands out completely for me is taking a coach load of young people, young students from Ysgol Penmaes in Brecon, to see the compact version of Welsh National Opera of Traviata. The feeling going down in the bus was one of apprehension. Teachers sort of laughing, saying, I can't believe I'm going to see opera, why is she making me do this? The children, the young people not knowing what they were going to see. And we went to the Millennium Centre and to sit there and watch their faces as they come into the auditorium of a very special place, which is very important to Wales, of which they may not have a chance to go again. It was magic for me. For them to sit down and have a BSL interpreter at the side of the stage, to have like a ticker tape at the top of the stage, giving outlines of the story. And in between each sort of section of the opera that they presented, they didn't do the whole thing, we wouldn't have time to do that, but a storyteller came on stage and spoke briefly about what had happened and what was going to happen next. She spoke about the changing around of the scenery and how theatres work. So it was a completely inclusive, expressive arts environment. The children were beside themselves. And I sat back down on the coach and listening to the comments going down where people were rolling their eyes potentially and why we're going to see opera. And even the staff was saying, she's changed my point of view. I think I will go to see opera. I'm going to take my wife to see opera. I'm going to take my children to see opera. It's so important that we share these genres of music with as wide an audience in Powys as possible, and the music plan has enabled that. Next screen, please, Eric. Partners are so important. So we talked about the Band of the Prince of Wales, Welsh National Opera, Live Music Now, and there are so many more local groups in the community. But the BBC National Orchestra of Wales has also been a huge friend. So they've enabled music sessions where the children can log on virtually, for singing sessions, music and wellbeing, for professional development for staff, as well as the self-employed tutors. But more recently, they came to the Strand Hall in Builth, and just over 600 pupils came to a concert in the morning or the afternoon. The National Music Plan ensured it was free for all of those children, and they came to hear and see a live orchestra. That sense of theatre, the sense of concentration on the musician's face, to see the empathy between the musicians, the collaboration, the teamwork, the resilience, the perseverance, and all those skills are key to the success of the new curriculum in any school in Wales, and there it was presented to them through music. And whilst we were leaving the Strand Hall, a I should have said a whole year group from a high school came in the morning, and two of the boys came up to me from the high school and they said, "Thank you, Lindsay." And one of them said to me, "Do you know," he said, "that's the first time I've ever heard a musical instrument played. I always thought it came out of a speaker." So if nothing else this year, if I have changed the life of one child to have heard live music and realise it doesn't come out of a phone or a laptop or a speaker, but actually it is played by different shaped instruments that are all incredibly exciting, then I feel that my job is done. There is so much more to do. Obviously, it's governed by whether or not there is further investment from the Welsh Government, but I would hope that they would have seen from all the social media that's gone out there, that the work from the National Music Service, that the National Music Plan is making a difference. And for Powys, I really feel it's just starting to make the difference. And we've got the last screen now, in that, you know, if we want young people to work together, then we need to provide a music ensemble. If you want them to listen to each other, put them in a music ensemble. If you want them to learn the importance of personal responsibility, put them in a music ensemble. If you want them to connect, put them in a music ensemble. The National Music Plan is enabling that at the moment. We're offering schools, you know, we have this money, you know, organised lunchtime choirs, after school choirs, recorder clubs, jazz clubs, think outside the box clubs. Come to me with your proposition, and if we can fund it, we can do it. And I certainly hope that I will be in a situation soon to come back to feedback to you that, you know, this work is growing. I've really rushed through that. Thank you, Irig. I hope that's just given you a flavour of what's been happening with the plan. But there is a 2-minute video that I really want you to see. I cannot share with you now, but I will send the link to Kath. And when you've got a quiet 2 minutes, please look at it, because I think it's fair to say that Carl, the head of Calon Erwin, and the class teacher from Calon Erwin, without me influencing their words, sums up the beauty of the National Music Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lindsay, and as enthusiastic as ever. Really big thank you for the work which you're doing. Councillor Sue's had her hand up for some time, so Councillor Sue and then Councillor Gareth. Sue, you're muted, Sue. Still not getting you. Is anybody else getting Sue, or is it just me? No, nobody's getting you, Sue, sorry. Try again now. Try speaking now, because you see your mic off. No, sadly, no. Put your comments in the chat, Sue, and we'll see if we can get it rectified. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I ought to declare an interest because I'm a member of a male voice choir. And I was just thinking, 18 months ago, we were asked to sing in a concert to fund a trip for the Bilth under-15 rugby team. And they came and joined us at 3 or 4 practices and sang with us in the concert.
Right.
And it was amazing to see them develop from the first practice when they didn't want to be there to the last practice when they were fully engaged, or some of them were fully engaged. I think I'm stepping out of the mark now, Lindsay, but I want to tell you, if you want to work or got a group that wants to work with the choir, just let me know, and I think I can get contacts around some of the choirs in Powys to actually do that. You know, it'd be a win-win situation because most of the choirs in Powys, I'm 63 and I'm one of the younger members in the choir, so we could do with some youth in them, or else we're going to disappear. And it is honestly the best thing I've ever done socially. And I can remember social services did a video about 5 or 8 years ago, and we had a chap who's no longer with us who appeared in the video. He lost his wife about 18 months, 2 years before, and he joined the choir just for social aspects. And he was saying what the benefits, well-being was around that. And it's an intergenerational activity. It's, yeah. Unfortunately, I can remember I was the officer that was partly responsible for the demise of the music peripatetic service with local management schools. Most likely one of the worst things that we ever did as an authority, I think, personally. But if you wanted to contact me, just let me know and I'll see what I can do.
Councillor Gareth, I'll absolutely contact you. Yes, I'm going to drag you in. You can come and do some music in the schools.
Thank you both. We'll let you both catch up at a future point. Councillor Sue, should we try you again?
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, we've got you.
Ah, that's better. I've put the earphones on now. I just wanted to say a congratulations to Lindsay. Gosh, if enthusiasm was anything to go by, we'd be flying, wouldn't we? Because that was a wonderful presentation. You didn't rush through it, Lindsay. It was marvellous. We caught it all.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I really, really hope the final year, just to hear what Gareth said earlier on, both my children did brass in the Old Glanreed School and benefited greatly from it. I'm the great-granddaughter, the granddaughter and the daughter of ex-bandsmen and a current sister and an aunt to brass bandsmen who play in Ystrad band. So I'm with you in everything you said. Somebody did contact me a while ago about making contacts with other people with music, and I did say about a sort of collaboration maybe with Ystrad Brass Band, because they have lots and lots of instruments, but unfortunately not so many children taking it up at the moment. So I know I did pass on details of my brother's details to somebody, and I was hoping they would get in touch, but that didn't happen. So I know that Ystrad Band would be happy to be contacted and maybe have some sort of a collaboration with Powers if we could do something like that. I noticed that in the presentation there was nothing further down south than Brecon. I don't know if that's because the take-up hasn't been there.
No, Councillor Sue, sorry, I've rushed through it.
Okay.
So Ysgol Maes y Dderwyn,
yeah,
I've had lots of first experience, so the cluster, and
okay.
actually the Maes y Dderwyn cluster. Ysgol Maes y Dderwyn is the only secondary school in Powys that has had a first experience in its high school as well.
Great.
So I think 100 children had opportunity for a string orchestra.
Brilliant.
And actually the band of the Prince of the Wales were there Friday morning playing for year 7s and 8s.
They were.
And again, partnerships are so important. And one thing
Yeah.
I've really worried about is the children in South Powys getting that access in Ystrad in particular to music charities and ensembles. So of course, whilst we've been away on the residential the last 4 days, Wayne Pedrick, who is the head of music service in East Port Talbot, has started to talk about some ideas about getting children from Ystrad into his music centres and making use more of his tutors as well to ensure there is an equal kind of offering. But I've been really, really thrilled and the support of Ysgol Maes y Dderwyn, because the music plan for the first 2 terms funded the music high school teacher in Ysgol Maes y Dderwyn as well to come out and work with the feeder primary.
Yes, she does. Yes, I know that. Yes.
And then Phil, the head teacher, because he was working so well, that in the 3rd term the school have funded that, and they're looking at future plans to keep that connection. So the music teacher is from a transitional point of view going in and sharing her skill set with the teachers and ensuring the children are getting as much music as possible, and they know her when they come to the high school, so then they have more opportunities there too.
I attended an assembly at Maes y Dderwyn a short while ago, and the string section has come on no end. It really was a pleasure to go and hear them. I'm glad that Mr. Pedrick is very involved. He's a friend of my brother's in Ystrad Band, so maybe together they can speak and take it forward. But diolch yn fawr, Lindsay. It was wonderful. It was music to my ears, let me tell you, to hear your presentation. And really a well done presentation. Thank you very much. Diolch, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you all, and some interesting stories and connections here. But please get in touch with Lindsay. Please try and develop these ideas, and that'd be great. Right, I'm going to limit it now. Margaret's going to comment, and then I'm going to bring it to an end because of our time. I'd love to speak about this all afternoon, but sadly, we don't have the time. Margaret, please.
Very quick comment. I'm not going to be long. I wanted to say thank you, but I remember when Gareth said he was forced to cut music that we had previously. Well, I know all about that because in Welshpool there was very vibrant, developed music, and a certain person, a member, a male member of staff, who was brilliant at developing interest and children taking part. But I look at this and I want to actually take your presentation or maybe your video and show other people, purely because you are doing what I keep saying to people. You can't stand still in different organisations when you've got to now meet the needs of the time and the people, you know, the young people or whatever it is at this time. And what you have done this afternoon demonstrates how people should be doing that and looking at it and meeting the needs of our time now and those young people, the time for those young people. And so I congratulate everybody involved, because it really is meeting those needs in a way that was different from 10 years ago or
Right.
20 years ago.
Okay.
Diolch, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Lindsay. I'm sorry if you feel I'm rushing it on, but obviously
No, not
time.
at all.
It appears as us as a scrutiny committee, the one thing which I pick out more than anything other is that we as a scrutiny recognise the success of this project and what it does do for our pupils. I think the one thing that we as a scrutiny committee can recommend is that we urge Welsh Government, which is going to have to happen through our powers officials. We urge them to continue this funding, because this is certainly a success story. So I think that is the overall outcome from our meeting today, is that we actually try and influence Welsh Government that they continue this funding, because it's reaching out to children and creating better lives, better outcomes, etc., etc., etc. So Lindsay, please reach out to us if you think there's more that we can do, because we really do recognise the benefit of what's going on, and please continue the work which you're doing. Okay, is everybody happy that concludes that? We enjoyed it last time, we've enjoyed it this time, Lindsay, so thank you. I'm sure we'll invite you back at some future date. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good, members, we've got quite a bit to discuss yet. I'm hoping to continue and get through the agenda rather than push it back to another time, because I think we've got some important items. So we're moving to item 9 now, which I'm looking for a member to propose that we go into confidential session. Thank you, Councillor Lucy. And a seconder? Thank you. And all in favour? I'll judge that on your silence. Right, we enter into confidential item session now, which is a development of what we discussed at item 8. We can go into more detail or into individual schools. Kath, you've raised your hand.
I just end for the public, Chair.
Yes, please, before we start.